why is categorizing individuals problematic? Why is putting people into classes or categorizing people a problem?
And that's and again, when it comes to race, class, status, all these things kind of like just merge together, right? Because it's not as simple as just to say, again, I'll give the example. You think that if I walk into a room, right? And I'm just going to pick another Dominican, so to speak, right? If I walk into a room and let's say Pedro Martinez walks into a room, are we going to get the same reaction? I mean, you might boo him because he's a Red Sox.
I was going to say, doesn't he play for the Red Sox?
Right.
I'm a Yankees fan.
But he's Pedro Martinez. He's a Hall of Famer, right?
You're still going to look at him and go, oh, God. Okay.
Exactly.
Hey, hi.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we look the same. We come from the same place. It doesn't matter. He's Pedro.
Yeah.
You know?
And he came from probably the same type of poverty that you have come from.
Probably worse. You know?
Worse. Yeah, you never know.
But he's Pedro. But when we look at people in classes, right, and what it is this, and I don't care what religion, what race you are, there's always categorizations, right? I mean, you go to a place like Britain, and again, we were looking at a Thomas Sowell documentary.
Thomas Sowell, yeah, you should put his link in our description too, so people can check it out.
But when you look at England, right, and you look at the class separation in England, and then you see that there were British people that came here. The Quakers, the Puritans, who settled primarily in the north, right? Yep. And then you looked at what he talks about the lower class, like the redneck that came from a completely different part of England, but they settle in the south, right? But you could see that separation of attitudes towards people, how shape a lot of what our nature, our state, our nation looks like, because you have two different ideologies, right? But I always ask the question, right? Why is there genocide in China? They all look the same.
I was going to say, yeah,
right?
if you think about it, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense, right? But really. What you have is a separation when it comes to class, right? You look at the Bolshevik Revolution, right, in Russia, and you look at the revolution, the workers versus the capitalists, and you have those two different classes, and that class struggle continues to happen up to this date, right? So you have those separations, and I blame science for this. And because the only way that science understands the world is by putting people into categories.
Categorizing, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way that we understand the plant world, the animal world. We separate them into a species, right? But we don't, and that's a very Western mind of thinking. That's a very Western way of thinking. Categorizing and seeing things in isolation.
To understand that we have to categorize.
Yes.
But that's not really the case.
It's not the case.
Arguing.
No, it's not. But it's not really just my argument. It's the argument of a lot of things, of a lot of people. The difference between Eastern philosophy, right, which includes Buddhism, includes Taoism, it's the idea that everything correlates to one another, right? Western philosophy separates things in categories in order to understand it. And this is the problem. We talked about race. Are we talking about class? It's because in order for us to understand things, we have to separate.
It's interesting you say that too. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but it's interesting because there's this theory called systems thinking, and it talks about basically where speaking from an organizational point of view, I'm getting my doctorate in strategic leadership, so this is my thing, right? But in an organization, you have these different components. You got HR, you got this, you got internal, I don't know, whatever, different departments, and what you do to one of those components, you have to do, or you do to all of the components, because it's a system. Yes, and that's what we are as humans. We are a system, and when you do something to one category, essentially you affect them all.
That's the idea of an ecosystem, right?
That's what I'm trying to get at.
That's what I'm saying. That's the problem.
So when you can't categorize is the Western philosophy you're talking. You can't categorize, because if you affect one, you're still affecting everything else.
The problem is the individual. That's the problem.
Of course.
Because
it's always the problem.
It's easier to say, well, I'm different than you,
right,
because of the color of my skin.
Mm-hmm.
So because I look lighter or whatever, I'm better. Right?
Yeah.
There's a certain, and when you think about this, when you think about who is really at fault for this, it's really a small population that everybody else follows, right? Because if you look at Nazi Germany, right, there was a small group of people, right? Hitler, what's his name? The propaganda guy, I forgot it was Goebbels.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was a group of people that continue to hammer this thing.
Yeah.
Right? This idea.
Driving it, yeah.
But everybody else followed.
Instead of...
And everybody succumbed to the fear, right? So it's the same thing that we do when it comes to this part, right? When it comes to race. We follow this race leaders or this ethical leaders, but what they're pushing really is more separation.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
And then you have on the other side, people that feel guilty about what happened in the past. It's like you can't change the past, right? It happened, but you have to move forward. And the way to move forward is to understand, both from an individual point of view, your own characteristics, right? The other person's characteristics, and understand that those things are important to be, that they're both important, but there's points in which we mingle. Right. That some beautiful thing could happen. Yeah. Right. So the idea is looking at things not so much from the individual, and this is my concern. My concern is this, and what I see more, it's more separation.
Right. And you're talking about being more collective, having more inclusion.
It's respecting the other person.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's a basic thing. You tell me any religion doctrine that doesn't say to respect the other person.
That doesn't promote the respect part. No, I get it. I do.
Regardless.
But that's the thing. Where did we fall off that we're so religious, and so many people are so, driven spirituality wise and whatever, but we don't follow that very simplistic rule of respecting the other individual, regardless of what you look like. Because
it goes against our animal nature. That's the reasons why. That's the reason why. It's like, what's in it for me? Yeah. Right? But when you say that, what's in it for me alone, you don't recognize that you live in an ecosystem.
Right. Right. And that we need each other for our survival.
Yes. Right? Yeah. I mean, but that's the basis of it all, is that you have individuals. And this is why what we do, we look at the system as a whole. Right. But when the individual has to take charge, and just because I'm Hispanic or whatever, that's a part of who I am. Right. That doesn't mean that that's everything that I am.
No. Right. You're a lot of things.
You are a lot of things.
Yeah. Right. We are a lot of things.
But people want to just put you in a box. Yeah. And people do that.
And they want you to stay in that box.
And they want you to stay there.
They don't want you to. Don't speak out of line. Don't
speak out of line.
Stay in your box. Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And again, it's I wasn't brought up like that. No. Right. And if I see something's not right, I'm gonna speak on it.
Oh yeah.
Right. Even when it comes against my own culture. Yeah. Right. Of course. Like, for instance, like I will never watch a soap opera, like a Spanish novela.
A novela.
Number one, if you talk about classism,
that is
because most of those novelas is like the poor girl from the barrio, falling in love with the rich guy, and the family doesn't want her, it's the same.
A lot of them, not all of them, but yes, most of them are. Yeah, they're definitely. I know we talk about this frequently. Whenever we see those things on TV, they don't even really portray our, say, Dominican. They don't portray it equally. No, it's not an equal. There's a little bit of inequality.
What it is, and it's so because
they don't all look like that.
No, but that's again, it's a race or it's a class, right? Because again, is even
it's a little bit of both.
It's a little, it's but again,
or a lot of both.
What is it? And then again, I don't feel that you should just have somebody on TV just because, well, whatever. It's like, I don't really watch much TV. I watch, we watch a lot of documentaries.
Yeah.
We watch shows that we find interesting for us.
Right. That we're going to get something out of.
Even though a lot of the people don't look like us or whatever, it's a point that matters.
Right.
But again, it's like when you depict class like that and you depict those type of things in that way, it becomes problematic because at the end of the day, what is the end game again?
Yeah, that's the question.
What's the end game? The end game is I'm better than you.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not good enough.
Right.
Now, that becomes problematic because, yes, you might be really good at a certain thing and you might have achieved a certain level of success.
Right.
But necessarily, that doesn't mean that you're better than the next person.
Right.
This is something that personally bothers me, right? Okay. Like missions. When people go to like third world countries, and there's a perfect example of it is in Haiti, right? I was watching a documentary on NGOs, right? NGOs are these companies in which whenever a disaster happens, they give this NGOs money, right? Mm-hmm. And the NGO money is supposed to go out to all these different communities that are affected
by the tragedy or
what have you, right? But these NGOs obviously have administrative costs, bureaucratic costs, and all that stuff, right? So what happened in Haiti, and it's a beautiful documentary that talks about this. It's called Poverty Inc., right? Okay. So there's a farmer in Haiti, right, who he started to grow rice. Mm-hmm. He planted rice and grew up rice. What happened? One of these NGOs brought rice from outside.
Oh, yeah.
And and rice that was completely dirt cheap.
Right.
And almost being given away.
Right.
So this farmer who could create and establish an industry in that country
got wiped out
by free rice. Now, how is that helping them? There was another example in that same documentary about Haitians in Haiti creating solar panels, right? Mm-hmm. To create an industry in there to provide power to, but what happens? Same thing. An NGO comes in, and that NGO, we're going to build this, we're going to build that, we're going to do that. What happens to that person?
Yeah, people
what happens to those the
dirty little secret about the
about feeling pity for people instead
allowing them to be resourceful.
Exactly.
Let them be. I mean, and that's the thing. I think there is a lot of appreciation for people that come over and help and do that kind of work and whatnot. But I think when you do it, you have to be forward thinking about what it is that you're going to be doing. How is this going to affect the individuals?
The thing with that, I think, is that you go into these things feeling pity.
You do. You feel sorry for them. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah.
And when you feel pity for someone, again, that's a class. They're different than me. Mm-hmm. Right? They're lesser than me. Mm-hmm. I feel pity for them. Yeah. Oh my God, look at them. Mm-hmm. But in the last 20 years or so, a lot of catastrophes have happened in Haiti, right?
Right.
A lot of aid has come in there. Mm-hmm. And look at where Haiti is right now. Mm-hmm. And where are we allowing them to help themselves?
Yeah.
But you have all these companies from the outside interest coming in.
Well, we're impeding their growth. Like I said, their resourcefulness. They're now becoming dependent on something that they could have manufactured on their own.
Yeah. And again, it's like people will say, well, this is because of race. It's like, no, it's class.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because what it is you have people here or wherever thinking,
yeah,
not realizing that Haiti is the first country in the Western Hemisphere to gain their independence.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing to pity about that. It's like, these people are nothing to mess with.
Yeah.
It's
they fought for their freedom.
They fought for their freedom. and you could say whatever you say about Haiti and Dominican relations, right? Because there's a contentious thing. But at the same token is we have to understand. We got to see things for what it is. Mm-hmm. There's race, there's class, and all those things. The more separation that we have, my question would always be, what's the end game? Mm-hmm.